my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. In today's video we have a few tidbits for the Book of Boba Fett and other shows as well, so let's dive straight into it. We begin with Tales of the Jedi and some huge information that just dropped thanks to the official Disney Plus press release. The names of all 6 episodes which drop on the same day have been announced. Let's go through them. So they say, Dave Filoni is the creator, supervising director, executive producer and writer of 5 of the 6 episodes, with Charles Murray directing the final one. The titles are Life and Death, Justice, The Sith Lord, which is about the new Inquisitor, Practice Makes Perfect, which is an Ahsoka Padawan episode, Coda, and the final one is titled Choices. We also now know that the mysterious Inquisitor is being voiced by Clancy Brown, who famously voiced Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob, but also has a filmography of voice work that includes Marvel and DC roles. Now, speaking of Tales of the Jedi, we also have some exclusive information revealed to us in the latest 2 issues of Star Wars Insider, issues 213 and 214. They do a deep dive into some Book of Boba Fett scenes, but first of all, let's look at the updated production diary. The Bad Batch Season 2 is back on the Coming Soon page, alongside Tales of the Jedi, which drops next week, and The Mandalorian Season 3, which although no longer has its February 2023 release date, is still expected to drop before spring of next year. Recently, of course, we had Carl Weathers confirm it's still going to be February, but some rumblings and rumours suggest that it's going to premiere here in London at Star Wars Celebration next April. They're apparently trying to do a repeat of the Kenobi premiere, but as I say, my dear friends, these are just rumours, but imagine the anticipation and the hype if that ends up being true. Although many fans are loving the Andor series, no show gets the excitement up quite like the adventures of Din and Grogu in The Mandalorian. It's also great to see Skeleton Crew and Ahsoka on the in-production section of the page. And before we move on, guys, which of these upcoming shows are you most excited about? The Bad Batch Season 2 in January, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, and now that we're just over 1 week away, how are you feeling about Tales of the Jedi? And so now moving on to the Book of Boba Fett. The Boba Fett fan club, of which I'm a member, have shared details from Star Wars Insider which pertain to the series. And we finally have some answers to some of the show's most obscure scenes. Now, before we talk about that, I've been thinking a lot about Boba Fett recently, because I've just finished reading the Star Wars Legends comic collection titled Boba Fett Blood Ties. It's an anthology of some of the best Boba Fett comics from over the years, as it attempts to tell Boba's story, including the expanded universe version of how he escaped the Sarlacc pit. And while reading it, it was kind of sad to see just how incredible some of these stories are, especially compared to a lot of what we got in the Disney Plus show. It's really night and day. Now, to be fair, as you guys know, I did love a great deal of the Book of Boba, and I think it absolutely deserves a second season. There was so much potential there with the characters, and I love Temuera Morrison, but Robert Rodriguez and Jon Favreau should do what the comics did in terms of giving us a Boba Fett story that has strong ties to Jango Fett and the legacy he left behind, because his death on Geonosis really affected young Boba. And while the show started out giving us a few flashbacks, they never really fully alluded to it. They never brought things full circle or addressed how badly Jango's death affects him, even to this day as an adult. And while filming Attack of the Clones, George Lucas even said there is no Boba Fett story without Jango. And in the Disney Plus series, I wish they went further with that father-son relationship, albeit in flashbacks. Jango was not just his donor, he was his father. They spent so much time together, and before his death on Geonosis in episode 2, Jango gave Boba meaning in his early life on Kamino, and the comics addressed that perfectly. And you don't even need to have a show full of flashbacks, because in Blood Ties, even in missions he takes after Return of the Jedi, he ties up loose ends that Jango left behind, and it completes his story arc in a nice way. They barely even addressed his struggles of identity being a clone in this show, and for me, that episode 2 connection is essential. And I guess you could say a big part of that is having grown up with the prequels. Now, moving away from Jango Fett, if they do a Book of Boba Fett Season 2, I'd love to see more of the grittiness that Andor is giving us. Maybe some 1313 vibes, a Star Wars underworld feeling, but with Boba Fett as daimyo travelling the galaxy and having his past and the past of his father haunt him. Now, I think it's a given that we're going to get more Boba Fett in Season 3, and in some ways, maybe he's better as a side character, but I would like to see a Season 2 explored in its own right, introduce us to big bad crime lords, more Hutts, and a show that does justice to the legacy of this character. After Boba's survival of the Sarlacc pit, rumours shocked the galaxy as teased by Bib Fortuna. But what about the possibility of exploring those who already claim they've met Boba after his death? In Legends, a bounty hunter called Jodo Cast and a clone named Spar pretended to be Boba for a while. Now that's a subplot that could be really interesting to explore. Maybe one of these imposters tarnished his reputation, and now the real Fett has to right a few wrongs, since now he's all about ruling with respect. There are so many avenues that could be explored, and as I say guys, I highly recommend you check out Blood Ties if you're interested in more Boba content. But something the Book of Boba Fett did really well is give the character a really strong evolution, moving beyond the life of a bounty hunter to becoming a Tatooine daimyo who learnt a lot with the Tuskens. And this brings us back to Star Wars Insider, because they begin the section on Boba Fett by trying to explain the tree scene on Tatooine, where Boba has a rebirth with the Tusken tribe. As I say, it's a scene that was symbolic of Boba shedding his past, and in this article they go into more depth. But before I go into this guys, I will say please stick around till afterwards, because I have an exclusive interview with Temuera Morrison where he talks about Boba and Jango. But first this section is titled The Tree. As part of his initiation into the Tusken Raider tribe, Boba Fett was gifted an innocuous looking lizard that the Tusken chief explained was a guide. The creature launched itself into Fett's nostril and induced a hallucinatory experience in which Boba saw aspects of his former life. The rolling seascape of Kamino, his armor, and the Sarlacc's stomach. The vision culminated in the limbs of a Tatooine wartwood tree, wrapping themselves around armored Fett. But what did it all mean? So they say a number of indigenous Earth cultures participate in vision quests as rites of passage, sometimes focusing on younger members, usually male, as they attain adulthood, and sometimes for the purpose of gaining courage or seeking favor from the spirits. Trees are symbols of guidance, as well as unity and sacrifice in some cultures and religions, and the imagery was certainly apt for this turning point in Boba Fett's life. They also say that Robert Rodriguez was inspired by The Empire Strikes Back, more specifically Luke's vision in the Dark Side Cave on Dagobah. In essence, it was all a learning experience, and while they do say it's open to interpretation, Boba Fett was never the same afterwards. He learned so much with the Tuskens, and in my opinion, those Tusken flashbacks were some of the best aspects of the show, but I do think it needs to press on, move forward to a different adventure, showing us Boba Fett at full power as daimyo. And so finally, my dear friends, Temuera Morrison opens up about the differences between Jango Fett and Boba. This is from Entertainment Weekly, and they say the following. In describing the differences between originating Jango Fett in 2002's Attack of the Clones and coming back as his son Boba for the Disney Plus series The Mandalorian and then Book of Boba Fett, Morrison said he took Boba Fett way more seriously. In his own words, he said of Jango Fett, "I was having too much fun. I got to dress up, wear the helmet, and sing a few songs for George Lucas, go like this and people will fall over. And not to mention getting to fight Obi-Wan Kenobi. He says, I was having so much fun." So when Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni called him back for The Mandalorian and subsequently the Book of Boba Fett, he said, quote, "I thought I better, put the real work in this time, do a little bit more research, make the most of the opportunity, because sometimes they don't come by again." I'm really hoping we do get more Temuera Morrison going forward, more Boba Fett in the Mandoverse, but also as other clones like Commander Cody, Captain Rex, and maybe even a clone in the Andor series, but most likely season 2. And speaking of Tem, a producer by the name of Snipes Murdoch was courteous enough to send me part of his interview at Star Wars Celebration with Tem, whereby he outlines more differences between Jango and Boba Fett. Temuera Morrison is an absolute gem, and if you're a patron, you already got early access to this a few weeks ago, but here it is, in Tem's own words, the differences between the two characters. I hope you enjoy.
What is your process in assigning or creating these different personalities for pretty much the same person?
That's right. You can't even change the hairstyle. I tried to change something, but I'm kind of limited. So with the Book of Boba, I just wanted to be a little bit better and have a little bit more fire with that character as opposed to Jango Fett. So again, the writers gave me the opportunity to go to the Tusken village and get healed and find a family and find new values and culture that maybe I hadn't been exposed to. And so this is where I kind of use the dynamic of my own cultural background in terms of using my haka energy, just to bring a little bit more fire to this scenario, if it was required. So So those little tiny differences. And then I thought I'd been in the Sarlacc pit and all that stuff where the character had been stuck in.
Right.
And then a lot of it was the makeup too, that we had to take him on a makeup journey and actually heal him. Also heal all the scars, all the acid, and being out in the sand, no sunscreen. So yeah, so even the makeup was a movie in itself, and like I think we had about 16 different versions. You know, okay, he's not so bad today. You've been in the Bacta tank, so finally the Bacta tank had done his stuff. It had done its stuff, and at the end of the day, I had less makeup as the program matured and went underway. So it was great. But a lot of it's due to this program and the writing. And they kind of set the tone of everything. So it was a wonderful opportunity for me.
And so, my dear friends, that brings us to the end of today's Star Wars news update. If you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I just want to take a few moments to promote my merch store. We have some brand new t-shirt designs. Click the link down there in the description to get yours. But until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you always. I'm Star Wars Meg. Have a good one.